Meet Tina here. How's everyone's doing? Happy Sunday. So anyway, here you go. We just started live here and waiting for people to come in. So anyway, today I would like to introduce Evolve app or Evolve Spiritual Marketplace. What is EvolvMe? I said Evolve earlier. Sorry, I make a mistake. It's EvolvMe. That's the name of the spiritual website. Okay, and this is the one that Theon, the CEO, has started this platform, which is going to be launched on October 25th this year. And this is what I'm doing for her. I'm just getting all her practitioners to come on and feature their gift, what they're offering to people who might be interested. So today I have Marc. Okay, Marc, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks, Tina. This is Quinn. My dog just jumped up on the couch.
That's a beautiful Queen, yin and yang there. Got the color of black and white.
That's
So,
right.
Marc, talk about Evolve Me. What is this platform so the audience will know a little bit, and not only that, talk about what you guys have to offer to the audience.
Sure. Well, EvolvMe is a meeting place for practitioners and people that want to offer different modalities of healing. So it's a meeting place between us and folks who are interested in engaging in any of those modalities for the sake of healing. That's my understanding of it, and it'll be a multifaceted web presence. Where you can get little samples of people's work. You can go on and do take part in live sessions that are sort of not spontaneous, but will be put onto a calendar. I think a week or two, or sometimes less. And I think the idea really is to create just a common for this kind of consciousness and this kind of work, in a culture where a lot of people tend to hide out from their intuitive gifts. And so I guess as much as anything, it's also a way to encourage folks who are engaging with practitioners, or maybe in prescient and early stages of coming into their own intuition and their own intuitive gifts, and trying to develop confidence and a greater connection with with their intuition. And that's really, that to me, that's really one of the crux contrasts. Is we live in a society that believes that knowledge is really the only valid mode of sharing information, or if something has to be written down for it to be real. It has to be able to be provable with a mathematical equation. And then, we tell children to basically let go of their fantasy world or the world of imagination, when that really is an extremely rich resource that we could otherwise bring into adulthood and use to figure out problems that can't be necessarily figured out with logical problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
Knowledge is about logical problem solving. You want a knowledgeable airplane pilot when you're going to fly somewhere. You don't want your airplane pilot using just intuition, though that could come in handy. But if you keep on trying to solve some deep-seated issue in a relationship or in your family, or something that's some sort of intergenerational challenge, and sometimes it works better to open up to the peripheral vision of what we don't know. Go to the edge of what you know, and then open up to the possibilities that are beyond the periphery of what you believe you can see, and then maybe you can actually see something more, and an answer of, I like the phrase, a way out of no way. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell, I think.
Ah, beautiful. Now you mentioned about you want to share Taoism teaching or something that has to do with the nine house that we mentioned earlier, and three way of life, right?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So there's this idea. There's a lot of I'm not. First of all, I don't claim to be any kind of expert. I've absorbed transmission of teachings from my main teacher, Jeffrey Yuen, and also from other teachers like my friends Andrew and Ann. And it's almost like when you get a really good teaching, it's almost like a reminder of something that you feel like you've already known,
Mhm.
or it makes implicit sense. It doesn't really need to be proven. And I'll give you an example. So sort of the three fundamental realities are, um, you know, um, aspects of being human. I'll just list them very, very quickly. There's a level of survival. You need to be able to eat, um, drink good water, breathe well, and sleep. So survival is number one. Number two is, in order to have a healthy human life, you need to learn how to communicate. And so that means being able to communicate clearly about one's needs for survival, but also being able to communicate clearly regarding um, uh, interpersonal relationships. How do I work through, how do I explain what I'm feeling inside? How do I trust in that? Um, and So that's the second level. And the third level is the level of discrimination. And I know that's a weighted word, but I like to use it. And you know, my main teacher used it quite often as well. You can also use the word uh, discernment. Um, um, but what it means is that we have choice, we have free will to choose. And so this third level is really the most important because it, it tells us that we can make better choices regarding the first two. We can learn how to survive better. We can learn how to eat healthier food. We can learn how to eat healthier food that's also healthier for our environment. We can learn how to drink or know where to go for clean water. We can learn how to breathe better through exercises like qigong. Or if you apply this choice to the second level, we can learn how to communicate more clearly. We can learn sometimes maybe that we're over communicating and it's time to maybe be silent and listen. And really those three aspects of survival, communication, which is communication slash relationship, and then discernment, those three levels are working all the time and they're working together. um, and you obviously need to have enough of the first one, survival, in order to have the opportunity to be able and and learn how to communicate better. And in the end, it's really about trying to find a greater and greater sense of peace and joy and ability to celebrate life, which doesn't mean that everything's always going to be happy-go-lucky. Um, I was visiting my friends actually this weekend, and there was a groundhog in the yard. And my friend asked me what it meant in terms of a totem animal. You know how animals can symbolize different attributes or pursuits, or they give insight. And I just looked it up, and actually, it happens to be the groundhog. Tends to go into the ground, so it spends a lot of time in the darkness, and so it symbolizes insight and the usefulness of meditation. And he happens to be an experienced practitioner of meditation. So in a very simple, there's other aspects to it as well, but um, I'm going to stop there for a second. Do you want me to bring in the nine heart mansions as well?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes, please.
Okay, see if I can remember them. So there's this idea that we wouldn't be born. I mean, there's a premise basically that this isn't the only life that uh, Taoism absorbed and integrated the concept of reincarnation. Um, from my understanding, when Buddhism came to China, um, and so there's this idea that our spirit doesn't really choose to incarnate in a perfected way. And again, I'm speaking with very little knowledge, but I'll just to keep myself safe. I'll just say most of us don't choose. We don't choose to be incarnated, in a perfect way, because otherwise there'd be no reason to be alive. There'd be no reason to grow. So conflict is inherently built into the picture of being a human being, and conflict has it has a bad name, just because the conflicts that we're used to in our culture tend to be violent and unnecessary, and are due to a lack of imagination and a lack of using one's intuition. So, but conflict is as simple as, having to stand up to gravity every day, or just raising one's eyebrows to gravity. Conflict is how we learn to grow with the challenges of being a human being. And so it's not just a physical conflict we're working with, we're also working with conflict as a metaphor. How do I learn to grow through this relationship? How do I learn to grow through the tension between the willpower of two people in a relationship? They love each other and they also have their own distinct will, and they probably share a lot in what they desire to do with their precious lives, but they also have some of their own desires that may conflict some. So part of growing into a deeper relationship and even deeper love, I would say, would come from learning to work with that conflict. And that's where you bring in, the levels of being human. Is our conflict getting in the way of our actual survival? Is our conflict making it so that we can't make enough of a living to buy food? Or is our conflict, are we limited by our ability to communicate? And that's why the conflict, we're not able to move through the conflict. Or the third level of discernment, well, maybe it's not the right time to deal with this conflict, and maybe this isn't the right person to work with this conflict with, because they don't really want to work with it. They're not ready to compromise at all. So anyway, so we're not born perfectly balanced. So we're born with certain excesses and certain deficiencies. And the first two houses are health first, and then wealth. And someone might be born, oftentimes those two work out well together. If someone is healthy, then they won't have any trouble with wealth. And I don't mean wealth in terms of being, monetarily, rich. Can be wealthy, but it means not having any real worry about one's ability to survive, to take care of that first level of being a human. Someone might be really healthy with wealth and health, but they might be weak in the travel mansion. That's another mansion. Or they might be weak in the wisdom mansion. They might be very strong in the knowledge mansion, because the knowledge mansion is associated with vocation. So if you do a job and you do it well and you have a lot of knowledge about it, you might be very strong in health and wealth. But it also might inhibit your desire to travel in some cases, or it might inhibit your desire to open up to what you do not know. And that's where wisdom comes from. Wisdom comes from having the humility to say, I don't know this. I can't solve this necessarily with a mathematical equation. What do I not know? Can I open up to this? Can I feel comfortable in the space of unknowing? And through the space of unknowing, perhaps an insight will come through that doesn't come from studying a book. It doesn't come from just writing down the words of a teacher, and it doesn't come from pretending to be someone else. So there are 9 mansions. Should I list them really quickly?
Sure.
Okay. So health is the first one, and you can think of health as internal wealth.
Yeah.
When the saying "health is everything," or you can't, if you don't have health, then what do you have?
Nice.
And that's a very Chinese medicine statement. We actually talk about currency, our blood as currency, and oftentimes when someone has trouble with their health, they also have trouble with wealth, because their blood deficiency equates to not having enough cash in the bank. And we use the term to bank blood when we're trying to help someone develop, to work out of, to have an abundant amount of blood, so that they have an abundant amount of energy to live their lives in a fully conscious, soulful way. So I'm not moving too quickly here, but so health, and then there's wealth. And then after wealth, it's a really important distinction, comes the house of prosperity, or the mansion of prosperity. So prosperity means, do I actually have enough where I feel I can give some away? Someone can be extremely wealthy, and we have a word for that when someone's really wealthy, but they don't feel like they ever have enough to give away. We call them a miser. And I wish I used to know the meaning of that word. It probably means Mies means, I'm guessing it means a lack of, but maybe someone can look that up and put it into the chat. Um, so prosperity, I not only do I have enough for me, but I have enough to give away. And then after that, I don't remember the order exactly, but let's say relationship is next. So relationship are the relationship we have with ourselves, and then the relationship that we have with other people, from the closest concentric circle of our intimate relationship, intimate relationships, our family, our immediate family, extended family, the people in our neighborhood, people who we might communicate with or share ideas with online. So that's relationship. The next house would be creativity, and so creativity. I once a teacher used to put creativity along also with procreation. We can choose to either um, we can choose both actually, but creating a life and using our essence and our blood to create a new life is an act of creativity, and so is making music or trying to share. You know, this is a creative act, in my opinion. Trying to share ideas in a way that can be understood. Um, to folks who don't who this is sort of new information.
Mm.
The next house would be the house of travel, and I see travel as sort of creativity is more oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes is an inward journey, and
Mm.
travel is usually an outward journey. Though I mean, I think you can argue those both ways. Um, so travel really, is is um, is a wonderful resource for those of us who can travel. And travel can be as simple as walking out the door and going for a walk. It helps us to get out of what we know about ourselves. It helps us to get out of feeling stuck. You know, like during the shutdown, when so many of us were at home for so long. It's an opportunity to travel more inwards, and that's useful. But sometimes if we feel stuck, sometimes actually physically moving, we are embodied, our spirits are embodied for a reason, I think. And being able to actually physically move, whether it's to get on an airplane, drive somewhere, or go for a walk, helps to shake off um, whatever thoughts we might be over identifying with. And then maybe we can allow for a new, a renewed dialogue with ourselves. And then so after travel, again, I'm not positive about the order, but I do know the order of the last three, and I think these could be put into any order actually. The last three would be knowledge, which I already mentioned, your vocation, what you know how to do, a
Right.
skill, a physical skill. The eighth house would be wisdom. Um, what do I, you know, what what do I develop in terms of a knowing in my soul that isn't something that can really be learned from anywhere else? What do I learn through resonance? And then the last one, number 9, is really, it's really what it's all about. It's simply the ninth mansion is about home, coming home, feeling at home in oneself, feeling at home in the world. Um, you know, we're full of stories, across the world of, that are similar to uh, Homer's Odyssey, where the hero Odysseus, he has to leave his home island of Ithaca and go on this adventure in order to really more fully come home when he returns. Like, or in the classic film The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy says there's no place like home, but she can't really say that or realize that until she's actually gone off to this other world, and then she misses home and she misses her family and her friends. But she also comes back for very valuable lessons and is even more herself than she was before she left. She knows more about the essence of who she is, and that's the conflict working, the conflict of not trying to just sit in one place and hope that everything's going to unfold just fine. Or, I mean, that's a silly example actually. The conflict of just having to work with the gravity of being able to learn more about oneself and to make a living ultimately helps us to come home more to ourselves and become more of who we are. Like with EvolvMe and like with what you're doing, you know, um, you're working with you're working with a certain tension here as an interviewer. You're working with the tension of wanting to share what they're doing in their stories, and also wanting to share who you are, and and trying to share something that's beautiful to the world and will help create, I think, more clarity and more peace um, in ourselves and in our society and in our world. You know, that's really the name of the game, I think, is, and that's a very Eastern perspective, that we can only really have peace in the world once we find peace and actively work at creating peace in ourselves. um, you know, which ultimately shouldn't be stressful, but it's a choice to actually, to that's the third level. That's the level of discernment. You know, I'll very quickly just say that the three levels of being a Daoist actually equate physically to the brain. The lower brain, you know, is oftentimes associated with fear, and that's the survival aspect. That's the part of our brain that's active. And then the middle of the brain, you know, um, that equates to relationships and communication. And our brain, actually, the two, that's really the level at which the two hemispheres of our brain, you know, are crossing over between each other. There's the corpus callosum, I think, which is the barrier in between. And then the forebrain, the front brain, that's what makes us, from my understanding, uniquely human. And that's the ability to think critically, um, and to think into greater and greater levels of discernment, and to be able to make greater and greater choices about who we are and how we want to live, and what kind of world we want to live in, and what kind of world we want to leave to our descendants, and what kind of world we want to leave to the earth and all of existence. You know, not just from a human-centric perspective. So there's one more thing I want to share, but I'm going to pause for a second and see if there's anything if you wanted to ask, and maybe I can look really quickly at some of the
Yeah,
comments.
we got Ro Eugene asked question. Mark, reincarnation is a fascinating topic for me. Do you recommend specific read or the author of content that can help me dive deeper into grasping the more clear understanding?
Yeah, again, I'm no absolutely like I'm pretty much a novice. I'm a beginner when it comes to this topic, except that in my heart I do believe in reincarnation, and it's not like I'm going to come back as Mark, but there's this understanding that the aspect of my being that encompasses my memories is eternal, um, and the spark of divinity within me that also makes me who I am is eternal. Um, there's this idea, and I also don't really want to go into it, but I was actually, you know, I like to do some comparisons sometimes between different traditions. So I was reading a book of the Dalai Lama, talking about it was just different interviews of his, and in one he's talking about the four different ways that we can reincarnate, and the one that Taoism focuses on, because Taoism is really, it's excuse the language, but it's kind of a badass tradition. It really assumes that once we're adults, once we come into a certain consciousness, that we're fully responsible um, for the joy that we can find in this life, and we're all born into different circumstances, and so that's why I don't really want to go into too deeply. But this idea that we actually that that some of us, I'm not going to say all of us because I don't like being absolute, and again, I don't really know what I'm talking about other than what makes sense to me. But for some of us, actually um, choose our parents, you know, and sometimes it doesn't mean that we're making choices based on having like the perfect, like, you know, Barbie doll, like, you know, childhood, if that is any fun at all. And I'll just leave, you know, I won't go into that, but the idea that life is supposed to be easy and we're supposed to be pampered, sometimes some of us choose very difficult and challenging parents because we feel like we want to learn a lot. Um, so in terms of reincarnation, you know, what I found really interesting from a Western perspective, and I'm going to see, his last name is Wolf. I think it's two, it might be one F or two Fs, Wolf. And he was the head of the psychiatry department, I believe, at the University of Miami. Um, and he writes several books on past life regression therapy. And so it's pretty interesting. I think it's useful to read him because he's Western. He's a Western, Western raised person, and he obviously had no understanding or belief in this until he started experiencing, talking about people's past lives. So, you know, it's fascinating, but at the same time, I do need to emphasize that my teacher is not really too interested in talking about reincarnation, um, other than the idea that we are fully responsible for our own happiness and our own, spiritual journeys. And really, by spiritual journey, I'm also mean like physical and emotional. Part of your podcast is about the unity of being human from a physical, mental and emotional, spiritual perspective. And my teacher really emphasizes that we shouldn't really focus much, and not to insult anyone, but that it's we have everything we need if we can focus on our state of discomfort or dis-ease, where we get the word disease from. We can focus on the lack of ease in ourselves in the present moment. Then we have everything that we need to move forward and um, to let go of the unnecessary programming, to peel off the layers of the onion, to become more essentially ourselves. And then Chinese medicine as a tool is designed and built basically. It's very ancient technology. It's a science and an art and technology really to help. The practitioner is a facilitator, and so facilitator. The word comes from Latin facile, to make easier. So it's not our job to try to fix people, but um, if we're able to and they're open to it, we can help to ease their journey as they transition through different parts of their lives, and ultimately as they transition out of this life, and even as they transition into this life. So that's all I have to really say. I do think it's a very important topic, especially in a culture that is so heavily materialistic. And I will just make a quick note that Rudolf Steiner, I'm not super well read on him. I'm not even well read on him, but he believed that his main purpose was to remind the Western mind to remind Western people of the reality of reincarnation.
Who was it again?
Rudolf Steiner. He's the
Okay.
person who he was
Yeah.
asked to apply his philosophy to education, and came up with the Waldorf school system. And then he was asked to apply his knowledge to agriculture, and he came up with biodynamic farming. And he gave lots of lectures. He was a very mainstream academic who kept his intuitive gifts secret until he turned 40, so that um, he would actually have standing in the academic world, before he started to say stuff that would make people dismiss him because they would think that he was crazy.
Mm. Very nice. Well, by the way, thank you everyone. Those who just come in, hello, hello everyone who are joining in. Thank you very much for being here. Raza just said, well, let's listen to Jason Shuka interview with Ray about reincarnation. That goes to Ro if you're interested. Yeah, I heard of him too. So anyway, so let's go on. What you would like to share as a practitioner for Evolve Me, what is it that you offer to your clients, or even for listener to find out about what kind of service that you can help people to
Sure.
heal, because it all having to do with healing, right? And you're talking
Yeah.
about freezing the emotion. What was that?
Yeah. So this is what I. This is we're going to do. My partner uh, uh, and I are going to. We'll have actual exercises. It's not just going to be me jabbering away. So the one thing I didn't list off were the seven emotions, that are recognized by Chinese medicine. And fear, we're going to begin with fear, and fear as it relates to health, because that's really the most clear and present, I think, topic. I think it has been for a long time, actually. And I think this whole experience with COVID-19 has just magnified it. I think it already was the most important topic, really. Um, and so we're going to talk about fear as it relates to the house of health, and then we're going to look at the three aspects of being human. Am I afraid for my literal survival right now? That's the first aspect, survival. Am I afraid that I won't be able to communicate, or that I'm not able to, or I'll never be able to communicate clearly, or tell someone that I love them, or say I'm sorry? That's a really important one in our culture. We're taught that it's considered, that it's weak to say I'm sorry. I know that a lot of people know that that it's actually strong, but um, that's the implicit message. You see it in our politicians. It's very rare that a politician will admit making a mistake, or even our major, news organizations, because to admit a mistake means that you're not. It implies, it doesn't really mean that you're not in control, but the it's insinuation from our culture, which expects people to be perfect, is that if you make a mistake, that you're not in control enough to be taken seriously, or you're not in control enough um, uh, to be worthy of leadership. So we have a really hard time with saying I'm sorry. So the third level would be discernment. Am I, when you think about fear and health, do I live I live with people who who will support me in becoming more and more of who I am, will support me in my ability to make decisions that they won't always, that might not always jive with their will, with their will or their desire, or I mean, really, both, because those are really supposed to be integrated. Um, so we'll have an exercise. One exercise actually that I'm borrowing from a friend who was at this gathering I was at, today and yesterday, is, we'll take the word money, for example, and we might do a meditation on money. And actually, I don't know if you're going to be able to play Charity's journey, on the health, on
Not
the
on
health wellness.
not on
Not,
this one. Yeah, because I didn't have enough time to figure out how to use it here on
Not a
Restream.
problem. Not a problem. Not at all.
Mhm.
So basically, we'll take a word like money, which is a very heavy weighted word, and it means lots of different things to each of us. Um, and her suggestion, what she's done with in her exercises, is just have people take a few minutes and write all the feelings and thoughts that they have, regarding money, and just keep
Okay.
on writing and writing and getting
Shall
all
we
on.
have everyone practice now?
Yeah, why
This is
not? Sure,
this is something we're just gonna let's play. Let's do that. Hey, you
sure,
guys,
yeah.
are you guys ready to do this?
So,
Let's.
let's take somewhere between 5 to 7 or so minutes. And the idea is just to write out everything. It can be, it could be your anger, your joy, victimhood. It could feel, sense of whatever comes through. And the idea is just keep on writing until you run out of things to say.
Okay.
And,
So
and so,
everyone,
yeah,
let's practice this. How about this? Mark, you go over, repeat again. We're gonna get about 5 minutes for everyone. Get a pen and
sure.
paper. Write out about the money, right? What makes them feel.
Yeah, just write the word money on a piece of paper,
Mm-hmm.
and then underneath of it or around it, uh, write what money means to you. Um, write about your difficulties with it, or your successes with it, or both, or what you think the significance of it is. I don't want to say too much, but just what the word money means to you.
Okay.
I'll,
Would love
I'll,
to ask
I'll do
everyone
it
to
too.
participate and just let have fun with that and see what you can get out of it because a lot of people seem to be this seemed to be the one of the big issue for a lot of people when it comes to money that I have heard of. So that's a good subject to work on. All
Okay.
right, guys, let's do it. Let's have fun with that since Mark is here to kind of navigate and helping us to deal with this. What emotion that you feel, right, Mark?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Emotions, thoughts, um, anything you think you can't get. You're stuck in your relationship with money. Anything
Mm-hmm.
about it.
Okay. So in the meantime, Mark, as people
Yeah.
are writing, we're giving some time to people. Um, What else? What other services that you do besides this?
Sure. So, um, charity is a very powerful, intuitive, um, in terms of being able to. She does sort of a. It's a Western form of what we just referred to for the sake of ease as call it the Harner method of shamanism. Michael Harner, he I think he made shamanism popular in the West with his book called The Way of the Shaman.
Mm-hmm.
I actually read it when I was in high school in Australia. Um, and I was fascinated in shamanism, from the time I was 18. Um, and and I don't think I'm not a visual. I'm more of an auditory person. So anyway, the visual shamanism is something that comes very readily to Charity Rae, my partner, and so she has started a podcast. Maybe we can put the link up for it. Um, a podcast where she shares journeys that she's done either for the collective or for individuals, and obviously with the full permission of individuals, she won't put them up there, and she keeps their names out of it.
Sure.
But the journeys are profoundly beautiful, um, and I'll go. I'm going to get that link right now, and paste it. Actually, do you have that link, Tina? Because
Uh,
I sent it with my phone, but
yeah.
you have it in your phone too. I can find it here.
Sure. Sure.
I just found it.
Okay.
So
Well,
Charity's already journeyed for the Health Palace. So you can there's a couple of journeys on this website link I'm about to put up, and you can listen. Please do listen to the other one, but the Health Palace is titled the Health Palace, and that's the one that I'm referring to in our chat. Here it comes.
so has everyone's writing down your list about the money? Would love to find out. Mm-hmm.
So I sent it to you, Tina. I don't know if that goes to the public chat or if I can add to the public chat myself.
I can actually post it on this.
So yeah, the format really is we're going to start off with a meditation, and then I'm going to teach. I'm babbling on about Chinese medicine because that's my main passion, and that's really just what I came prepared to talk about. But we're going to actually try to meld a few things, and it's all going to be Chinese medicine, because that's how my worldview is informed, and that's sort of mostly where I try to operate from. But we'll begin with a meditation in the beginning of our session, and then I'll talk for a little bit. We'll do an exercise like the one the folks are doing right now, and then we'll share. I mean, yeah, and it's not going to be just a one-way thing. And the whole, once I'm done speaking for 5 or 7 minutes or so, then folks can ask questions and we can go from there. But we're also going to introduce family constellations into this process, also known as systemic constellations, and that's a form that I learned from my teachers Dan Booth Cohen and Emily Blefeld, and it dovetails really, really well with an aspect of Chinese medicine called the 8 extraordinary channels.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how do I describe it? It's a phenomenological process, meaning that it can only be experienced. You can't. The knowing that comes through working in a family constellations process, and I'm used to doing it in a group format that people can do it one-on-one or two, or they oftentimes, my teachers in this, Dan and Emily, oftentimes work with a couple who are trying to figure out how to move forward, or whether to not move forward. And the understanding of why it works is going back to Rupert Sheldrake and morphic resonance, the group consciousness of like a flock of birds, or the group consciousness of a school of fish, um, exists in human beings as well. And sometimes the living members of, usually the living members of a family, um, if there's a recurring illness that goes through generations, or if there's depression in the family, or one member of the family seems to always have trouble with depression, um, the source is sought basically in the ancestral past. Not exclusively, but oftentimes there's some sort of unresolved trauma if you go back. And again, we're not trying to pinpoint. Sometimes we can pinpoint intuitively, or the person will say, yeah, my great aunt, no one ever really talked about her. She was mentioned once, and that's it. It's a process of working with that group consciousness, because consciousness doesn't just evaporate when we die. If a person dies, and this issue hasn't been resolved, or more importantly, really, they've been ignored, or sort of written off the rolls, or intentionally forgotten from the family system, then their presence, their consciousness creates a disturbance in the family system, and that can manifest as disease in the living members of the family. So it's really a process of affording everybody in the family system is recognized with having their rightful place, and at the same time, the person or people who are no longer living, they also, through what we call representation, they acknowledge that their fate was theirs, and they don't want the living members of their family system to be burdened by the fate that was theirs. A very obvious one would be a phenomenon called survivor's guilt, where like a single member or a few members of a large family are the only ones who survive, whether it's due to war or an accident, or famine, and they feel like, why was I allowed to live? And sometimes it's just simply a matter of making a connection with their ancestors, and their ancestors, being seen, being recognized, and that creates a peace in their current life as well. So the idea is not to go back and explore and get stuck in the past. Again, I want to emphasize that my teacher Anne was talking about this today. The idea in Chinese medicine is not to get bogged down in years of trying to figure out who I was in a previous life. It's really about constellations work happens very quickly. It's very when it works, the results are actually can seem almost instantaneous. I mean, you have to go through the process, but in an hour or two, a lot of shifts can happen, and it's not about, again, being stuck in the past. It's about being fully free to be in the present moment. Really quickly, it's another one of these trinities, and again, it's a very simplistic breakdown, but I think it's useful. Think of our everyday logical problem-solving consciousness that is considered to be the only really valid form of consciousness. The one that EvolvMe really is trying to create a forum so that people know that there's other ways of other kinds of consciousness, or other ways of knowing. And so the first one, which is the mainstream one, was just called out the first dimension. And again, you want the pilot flying your airplane to be working pretty much mostly in the first dimension. You want them to be in their logical problem-solving state of mind. But when we're in a difficult situation, in a relationship, or a pattern that we don't seem to be fully conscious of, then that first dimension of consciousness falls flat. And then what are the other two dimensions we have access to? Well, the second one would be ancestral consciousness, and the third one would be, very simply put, spiritual consciousness, or archetypal consciousness. So we're familiar with the first one in our culture, in Western modern culture or modern culture anywhere in the world, and the third one, if people consider themselves to be religious or spiritual. But the second one, the one in the middle, the one that actually connects us to our ancestors, um, that's one that's mostly been forgotten. And what's unique and special about the second dimension of consciousness is that the consciousness of our departed ancestors is very vital, can be a very vital resource to the living members. To me, like the consciousness of the 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 resource of consciousness um, that can come from my ancestors, something that pertains immediately to me and to people in my family. And they actually care about whether I'm starving on the street or not. And they care about whether I'm happy or not. If there's not as, again, I'm talking way beyond what I know, but just put really simply, the spirit realm typically is not some really invested in or doesn't really try to like fix or resonate with material aspects. The spirit realm, the third dimension, is really interested in our spiritual development, but the ancestral consciousness is actually really invested in and interested in our actual well-being, and that's why it's arguably a very important dimension of consciousness, and why I still believe that systemic constellations, or as it was previously known, family constellations work is valuable. And again, I'm going to be teaching it from a Chinese medicine perspective, in the best way that I can, because it actually it resonates very much with a whole lens of Chinese medicine called the 8 extraordinary channels, which are really can be also called the channels of evolution, the channels of personal evolution, the channels of collective evolution. And I'm going to stop for a moment and have a sip of water, and maybe
Sure.
maybe people
So with
can
the
when
8 channels, is that
um,
what you'll be working with your clients and to help your clients with this?
yeah, that's something I like to use in my practice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the 8 channels are 3 different categories. Again, it's another it's another one of these ways of organizing, in terms of a trinity. But the first one really is sort of like your blueprint. Is this something you want me to chat about? Do we want to stop?
You can just quickly mention about each one of them.
Okay, sure.
The 8
Okay,
channels. I
sure.
mean, we
So,
don't really have to go into much detail, but just
okay,
do that. Mm-hmm.
yeah, sure. Yeah, so this is a teaching. This is something that really comes from classical Chinese medicine and was taught to me um, from the tradition of my teacher.
I'm losing your voice.
Oh, is this better?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, maybe I'll just sit back for a second, and because my neck is a little bit craned, if I can just shift for a bit here. Is that okay like that?
That's much better. Yeah.
Okay, great. So, um, this comes from our oral classical Chinese medicine, Chinese Daoist lineage, and the first of the 8 extras is really the one that the 7 others are formed from, and it's called the Chong, which can be translated as thoroughfare, um, and it's really would be equated to the DNA. It's in the last 30 years, maybe just 25 years, uh, there's an understanding that's come into Western medicine and Western science called epigenetics. Is that something that you've heard about?
I have heard of it. Yes.
Sure. So there used to be an idea that when we were born, our genes dictated 100% of who we were going to be. or who we are, who we become. And then this understanding came forward about 25 years ago or so. Actually, a woman actually presented this understanding back in the 50s, and she was made fun of and forgotten. And I don't remember her name right now. She's since been recognized. Um, and and it's this idea that epigenetics is that we are born with certain predispositions for disease. But whether or not those switches are in an on or off position depends on the environment that we're born into.
Mm.
And a really wonderful book you can read for a Western bridge to this idea, two of them actually. One would be Bruce Lipton's The Biology of Belief,
Mm.
and another would be um, Molem Sharon's book, Survival of the Sickest. And And so this idea also exists, and this practice exists in Chinese medicine, that it's possible to influence the expression of someone's DNA. That means working at the deepest level of the body, the constitutional level. If
Mm.
someone has a recurring disease that they can't get rid of, autoimmune disease, cancer would fall into this category. Yeah, it does, but that's another. It's also another lens. Um, Thinking more about like personal evolution, and I'm going to actually use the constellations as a correlation. If there seems to be a recurrence of breast cancer in a family that goes through the women in the family, that would be an eight extraordinary channel issue, and we would be treating the person to help switch off, to turn the gene expression that is partly responsible for the cancer, turn it off. But I don't want to make it sound too mechanical. I mean, what you're always working with in classical Chinese medicine is the spirit. So we're really looking at how what the manifestation of the disease is in a spiritual way. What disposition is. Do they believe that they can get better? Do they believe they are worthy of getting better? If I, as a practitioner, don't believe that they can get better, then I shouldn't be treating them. You know. At the same time, if I don't think that the medicine I'm using, I don't think I'm well practiced enough at it, or if I don't think it's the right medicine for the person because they're more Western or modern medicine minded, then it's my duty to refer them out to the best Western doctor I can think of. And that's the point that my teacher has always made really clear, that we should never have the same hubris that Western medicine has. Western medicine oftentimes will say to someone, if they've done everything they can, that their technology and experiments, and I don't want to put down Western medicine at all, but I do want to call out this idea of a doctor coming in and saying there's nothing, not only is there nothing that we can do for you, there's nothing that can be done. And that's the problematic statement. There's nothing that can be done, because that should never be. That there's always something that can be done, and maybe it's someone's. Maybe the healing isn't necessarily in the person being cured. There's a difference between being healed and being cured. Maybe it is the person's time, but oftentimes it isn't. And even then, we can help to heal the person, even if they can't be cured, or we can heal someone. My teachers, my main teachers, they see lots of patients who have fourth stage cancer, and they have lots of success stories with treating fourth stage cancer, because they're not listening to the classification of disease that a Western doctor is given, and they're not listening to a Western doctor's prognosis that nothing can be done. But the doctor says there's nothing I can do, that's fine. And likewise, if there's nothing I can do, then I'm going to try to refer that person to a healer who can help them.
Oh,
So
wow.
I didn't get very far in the eight extras, but I think they go from the DNA, um, and then the Chong gives birth to this front midline channel, which is called the conception vessel, or the Ren channel,
Mm.
and also the governing vessel, or the Du Mai channel, which runs along the midline of the back. And these have this is a very beautiful relationship here. The front midline, the conception vessel, is about, who am I as part of the whole? Who am I as part? Who do I belong to? When a baby is born, in an ideal situation, the mother will hold the baby's front midline to her front midline so that a deep bonding can happen and the child can feel fully contained and nurtured and have what we call yin. They can have enough substance and stillness and ease to be able to grow.
Mm.
Um, and then this back midline channel is, that has a more of a yang. It's a yang energy. It's the sea of yang, and
Mm-hmm.
that's about who am I apart from the whole. And this is my understanding. But who am I as an individual? What is my destiny? What are my desires for myself? Whereas this front midline is always more about how do I, how do I, how do I feel part of the whole? So there's always this tension in a human being in every moment, really, in every thought of holding hands and letting go. And the holding hands is the front midline. Do I want to
Mm-hmm.
hold hands right now? Or is it, do I need to walk and do my own thing right now? And there's a meditation, and Charity, Rae, and I we'll do this in our course called the microcosmic orbit. And it's really about the flow of chi running along the conception vessel and then down the governing vessel and around the body. And there's this constant flow and interplay between, this yin of being together and this yang of doing my own thing.
Mm.
And it's built in. It's part of the built-in conflict. Is it okay? Am I safe enough to be? Is this person safe enough for me to be with? So I can say I need to stop holding hands right now and do my own thing, and I won't be abandoned. So that gets into those levels of survival and communication and discernment, and the person is able to discern that I'm not going to walk away. I'm not going to walk away completely. I just need to be in my own space. I need to go in the basement and play some music, or I need to go for a walk in the woods. So
Mm.
that's the first trinity of the eight extras. That's the short abbreviated way of saying the eight extraordinary channels. And then the next level, the second trinity, is really about, think of about it as the yearbook of life. In high school, um, the yearbook photographs and it also has words. And the photographs are showing how you've changed physically
Mm.
over the course of high school.
Yeah.
And then the words that talk about the activities you were doing and maybe some of what you were feeling, that's conveying, the yin aspect of how you've grown how you've grown and evolved on the inside. Did I say yin already? No, that's the yang aspect. The yin is the growth, and the yang is like, what did I do? How did I grow over the course of those years
Mm.
through the different activities? Did I start off, as an athlete and end up, in the drama club? That would be, something that would be recognized by the linking vessels, as in to link a chain, like the chain link.
Mm.
So that's the way that we can look at someone's life as they evolve at a personal level over time. And every 7 or 8 years, or maybe it's an even shorter period of time these days, because human growth has been altered a little bit. But if someone oftentimes will have a disease, but they'll get sick, say every 7 years or every 8 years, and it's because an issue keeps on resurfacing that they weren't able to fully resolve before. So that would be a situation where we would bring in these linking vessels. Um, or if someone doesn't feel comfortable about aging, you know, at a physical level, or even in terms of what they're doing, um, with their activities, then that's also a linking vessel. If someone wants to literally be someone else, that's going to be a yin aspect. If someone wants to do exactly what someone else does, that's going to be a yang aspect.
Mm.
So, and then the third trinity is the trin is think of it as not being superficial in an unuseful or meaningless way, but it's the most at the surface. The first channels we began with were the deepest, the constitution, and then we moved into the blood. That's the middle level, but now we move into more of like everyday, what we call Wei Qi, or the awareness of the moment, and that would include what are called the Chow vessels, which are can be translated as the vessels of how we stand with relationship to the world. Are we extremely introverted? We feel tired when we wake up? Or are our eyelids always heavy? Or do we have trouble falling asleep? You know, do we feel like we have to change the world and the world has to do exactly what we want it to do? Are we burning ourselves out as activists, or are we burning ourselves out by not doing anything? Both of those can burn someone out. And that would be the third trinity, and included with that third trinity is a beautiful channel that actually runs around the body. Most acupuncture channels run up and down, um, and from the exteriors of the limbs or the head. This one actually goes around the waist, and it's called the belt channel. And you can think of it's called daimai, which means belt channel, and this would be like the storage spaces of our body of things we haven't been able to let go of. So if you have a garage full of stuff, or if your closets are full of stuff, then your physical body probably is holding on to things too, like unprocessed toxins, or a whole bunch of what we would call dampness. That the dampness might be there actually. Again, and there's no judgment. The dampness might be serving a very important function. So as we get older, they might have what are called love handles or a beer belly, and regardless of how someone develops, their belt vessel, oftentimes that extra dampness is there because it's helping to counteract unresolved heat that we have in the body from maybe unexpressed emotions. Like the feeling of if you have so much going on the inside and you can't let it out, it starts to heat up and the chest feels like there's this friction, or I got to get it off my chest. We have all these sayings in English that really speak directly to Chinese medicine. Well, then that belt vessel may be useful until someone can clear. So once they can clear that heat with the facilitation of a of a healer of some kind, in my case, using classical Chinese medicine, using the vessel. Well, I wouldn't necessarily clear it with daimai, but if once you clear the heat, oftentimes a lot of that dampness will just disappear, will just dissipate. Um, over the course of a day, or the course of a week, or a few weeks, or maybe a few months, and so that's just a rough run through. On I see. I can talk about this stuff, any of it in the course. I just I'm going to take a lot more time and make it really tangible. And if I can see my audience when I'm teaching, then I'll get a sense of if they're tuning in, or I guess I'm having trouble reading the chat at the same time.
Yeah. Well, I know we have a few
Oh, it's
questions.
8 o'clock.
We have a good question. Is
Sure.
it enough to set the intention only to go through all this healing?
Um, well, no, but it's it's the most. Arguably, I'd say it's the most important piece. If you set an intention, that means you care about yourself, and that's an act of self-love. Depending on the intention, but I'm assuming the intention is the person wants to feel healthier. Um, and so setting intention is the beginning, and carries through to the end. And um, but it's a good question. I'm trying to act like I know more than I know, so I'm just gonna sit for a moment and have a sip of water.
Humble, very
I'm gonna have
humble.
a sip of water and think about it.
Please do drink water while you're talking if you want that. If we're very, very kind of easygoing here.
Mm.
Another person, remember we talk about write down what the money make you feel. We have one person that just shared money can help or destroy people. So when the person wrote that, what does that mean to you?
What did they write?
The money makes the person feel like the money can help or destroy people. Remember, we have them do that little exercise and write down what the
Yeah,
money.
yeah, yeah. No, yeah. I'm thinking about it.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, that's intention, really, and that's part. See, intention is part of it, but also I think, working with humility, working with, there's this idea that we ought to go through life confident with what we know. But that said, always willing to question what we know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's it's an art form that that takes that I'll be working on for the rest of my life. I want to be confident with what I know, and also allow for and admit when I don't know something, and be willing to change my mind if something seems to make more sense or seems to contradict or seems to fill out more of what I know. Because if I, and that's where the money doing harm versus good. An example I think that's helpful. Um, Someone might want to give a bunch of money to an organization, or they might be trying to help someone who hasn't asked for help. If the person doesn't ask for help, then it's not helpful. You know, it, if someone you think that someone wants to help, or you can always ask them. It's not necessarily black and white, but if someone really says, "Don't help me," or you can tell that they don't want your help, then
Mm-hmm.
helping them is an infringement. And that's another aspect. There's another trinity. It's maybe the most important one, um, and it basically says that we're responsible for our own growth, our own self cultivation, our own joy, our own peace.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And then the second one says, but if we find something that really works for us, it won't necessarily work for someone else. We
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't try to infringe or evangelize. We shouldn't go door to door and say, and I don't use the word should, but yeah, for me, going door to door and saying, wake up to the message of Taoism, self cultivate, that would be infringing on someone. If someone comes to my office, or if they are listening to this, I'm assuming that they can turn it off if they're not enjoying it, and then I'm not infringing, you know. So, and the third aspect would just be a lot of what I'm talking about would be called very loosely the cosmology.
Wow.
So when it comes to money, you can help someone or hurt them based on whether or not they want to help or not, and then whether or not your assessment, if someone wants money so they can do something you think that's going to be harmful for themselves, and maybe it's not best to give them that money. But
Mm-hmm.
or if some very wealthy, very wealthy um, person wants to give a lot of money to research on um, how to grow food in a more um, artificial way that isn't necessarily helpful or sustainable, but they think it is. They try to impose it on a population who doesn't want to use their untested science and that wants to stay with their indigenous science, then that's not helpful. So, just thinking in terms of what can I do for myself that makes me happy, and how can I share that without imposing on other people or infringing on them? That's just working with those two concepts um, has helped me a whole lot. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and, and yeah, that's a
So,
good
Mark,
question. Thank you.
so earlier you went over the 4 out of 8. Is it Trinity? Is that what we call it? Trinity, right?
Trinity, yeah,
Trinity. Okay.
yeah.
So those are the 8 Trinity that you work with your clients.
Oh,
Is that
those are the 8 extraordinary channels. So think of a channel as an acupuncture
okay?
uh, pathway, and so yeah, and
So
I use
what
those.
would
Mhm.
that heal their whole being, body, mind, soul, and spirit? Is that what it is? Because you were
Yeah,
talking about
absolutely.
that earlier, the complete channel.
Ultimately, I mean, it'll facilitate it. Ultimately, they heal themselves, but it'll facilitate it. If their intention is there, it can do a lot of facilitation. I mean, it can help someone make a major breakthrough. Um,
Because what you just shared for them quite fascinating, with all
yeah,
the channel that you were talking about. Um, I know we're up to like an hour now. Would you
okay,
guys want
I
to
don't
hear
mind.
more for the rest? For 5 to 8, uh, post yes, and then we'll keep going. Because I know it's up an hour. It might be long for some people, but that's fascinating. Now, with this type of healing, the 8 channel or the 8 Trinity, Mark,
Well, it's not the eight trinities. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah,
I've been presenting a lot of ideas as trinities, but it's just the eight. Call them the eight extraordinary, the eight extra channels, maybe.
I see. So you worked with the 8 channels on the clients, on people who comes to you,
Yeah,
and
that's
this
right.
8 channel would help to heal and remove all this physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual uh, garbage that they
That's
have.
right.
Correct.
Perfect.
And
Yeah,
is it like kind
exactly.
of through meditation or through kind of counseling, like?
It can be done through meditation as well, actually. One of my teachers, Andrew, you know, he's deep into the healing power, and he teaches qigong. So, what's beautiful about Chinese medicine is you have all these different modalities that really stand alone within themselves. They have their own integrity. They're complete systems unto themselves.
Yeah.
Herbalism is also. Qigong is. Um, and there's probably purely meditation. There's probably meditation ones that I don't know about. And then my approach is acupuncture. And why acupuncture is special to me is because it's the one that really involves the direct interaction and touch. It's a touch modality. Touch is the first of our five senses that develops when we're in utero. So
Mm,
it's the deepest and most primal sense. So touch can really tap into the deep unconscious
I
and
see.
affect healing from patterns that we might have absorbed from our mother, for example. If our mother was very fearful when we were in utero, then we're born very fearful. And so
Mhm.
working with the conception vessel, this front midline channel, can help to completely and fully heal
I
person
see.
from that fear.
So basically, there's 8 channels. I hate for you to not finish the other four. Why don't we just kind of go quickly? Can you go quickly with the 4 channels? So I think we
Well, I
went
did. I
four.
did eight. I actually
Oh,
did
you
all
did
eight.
it? Okay.
Yeah, I didn't call them eight. So the first one was the Chong, which is the one
Oh,
that it goes right through the top of the head, down to the bottom of the trunk of the body, and that's the DNA. Think of that as the DNA, and then you know, um, and then that splits and creates the conception vessel about mommy and building yin, and then the governing vessel or the dumai, which is about who am I as an individual. Uh, what is my will in
mm,
this world? What impression do I want to make? How do I want to emboss an egotistical world? But not in an egotistical way, but how do I want to emboss the world?
mm.
And that was the second trinity was the trinity of the linking channels, not like Abe Lincoln, but like the chain, like the links of a chain. So how have I evolved over the various um, stages of my life? Often, classically, those were 7 and 8 year cycles, and those are the different links of someone's life. Here's one 7 year period. Here's another 7 year period. Another 7 year period, and if someone has a disease that keeps on popping up every 7 years, or they had something very traumatic happen when they were 14, and at 28, all of a sudden, after seemingly being very happy, they get really depressed or they feel very stuck, then we use the linking channels. That's the middle. And then the top level um, is working with the is working with the moment. Am I maybe um, am I pushing too much out into the world, or am I pushing against the world too much, or am I hiding away from the world too much? In my thoughts, even in my thoughts right now, am I thinking too much about um, not revealing a part of myself that might be useful to reveal, or maybe am I trying to talk too much about something I don't know about? One would be too young, and the other might be too yin, and
Mm.
so that would be very simplistically someone who has trouble sleeping, who has insomnia, then they're having a hard time reflecting in themselves. The the opening point actually for the channel for people who are maybe overdoing it, um, um, with or in too much conflict with the world. The point that opens that up is called stretching forward, going into the world, and the one that opens up, the one for people who maybe are waking up feeling tired all the time, or hiding from the world, or don't feel like they're worthy, the opening point for that is called shining sea.
Mm.
So before we had mirrors, we could see our reflection in the water. So one is about self-reflection, and the other is about stepping out of the self into the world. And there's always a balance between those going on in every moment. Um, and then the very final eighth one was that belt vessel, about getting rid of all the extra junk that's in the garage or the closets.
Ah, I see. Wow. That's
How's
a
that?
lot of work. That's a lot of work with the clients. So, guys, the yin and the yang, the feminine, masculine energy, just in case you're not aware of it. Wow, that's a lot of work with you with your clients. How many sessions would that take, Mark, to get people completely healed?
Well, that's the thing. It doesn't have to work in a linear way, you
Okay.
know. The classical texts usually, as a rough estimate, would say for a full change to happen at the constitutional level, it takes 100 days. But you
Mm-hmm.
can have a very dramatic change within a session, or within a few sessions. Um,
Beautiful. Mm-hmm.
so it really depends on how prepared someone is to how ready someone is to meet that change. Um, and how open they are, to allowing it to happen. But for the full change to set in, I think classically it was 100 days, which is approximately 3 months.
Oh, okay. That's not so bad. So, you got a compliment here from Rose. She said, I love this video. I will be rewatching again. So,
Cool. Thank you so much,
thank
Ro.
you. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Mark. That's like tons of information you're sharing with the audience.
Yeah.
I
Remember, we're not
find
going.
the
Go
Chinese
ahead.
medicine very fascinating, also. Yeah.
I just want to remind folks that I'm going to go into depth in the class with just one of these topics. I've talked about 7 or 8 different. I've kind of thrown a ton, and I feel
So we need,
a little
we
bit
need.
bad at it. But we'll focus on one piece at a time and make it very practical.
So you offer classes too, not just the personal healing. That's basically
Yeah,
what.
no, our main modality is going to be teaching weekly classes, teaching in a group format, and then we can do, Charity can do journeys on the side, and I can even do, virtual Chinese medicine as well. But the main I want to do in the beginning is is um, is an effort to create community, um, through to create community and share the simplicity and beauty of classical Chinese medicine.
Beautiful. Well, guys, you want to get connected with Mark, email info@evolveme.com. Okay. So I'm just gonna type to connect with Mark. It's info at Jesus
Are you
Christ.
asking me?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I'm gonna. I think I've overextended myself. I think I need an acupuncture treatment. Um, I know I just need to rest. It's all good.
Yes. Yes.
So do you get that, Tina?
Oh, yes. Yes.
So it's just my name, Mark,
Let me see.
period Robertson, period Lukes at gmail.com. Yeah, feel free to write questions if you want clarity. I love questions because it really, I think about a lot of the stuff in myself, but it really helps to draw it out and through. It's not something that I think sits in my brain. I think it sits in my awareness. And when people ask questions, it really helps me to learn,
Yeah.
more than I could ever learn just by,
Hmm.
hanging out with it by myself.
Good. Well, guys, thank you so much for being here. Please do not forget to click like. I know there's a lot of information Mark's sharing today. So what you can do is rewatch that his information. You want to get a hold of him, get a hold of him, and then you can connect and get the healing or take classes, with him through info@evolveme.com. And Mark, I want to thank you so much for being here. Look at everyone saying goodbye. Thank you too, 21st century male. Also, thank you
Yeah.
for your wisdom and your knowledge and your time here. And I want to thank you as well for all your time, your wisdom, and a lot of things that you can be helping people, because I think Chinese medicine are very, very powerful. Actually, in fact, I get my acupuncture every week.
Oh,
Believe it
cool. That's great.
or not.
That's
Oh
fun.
yes, I get massage every week. I get acupuncture every week, and I tend to fall asleep when I get acupuncture,
Yeah.
and I believe all these natural healings are very helpful, and it's not like a one-time thing. This is ongoing basis, So whoever wants to take classes with you or get healing with you, this should be an ongoing, because this is a lifetime that we have spent a lifetime destroying ourselves, but not intentionally. This is from all programming and patterns, right?
Mhm, mhm,
So
yeah.
it's
Sure.
nice you have all this knowledge that you have in balancing the energy, the yin and the yang, and for you to help your clients as well. So
Well, thanks.
and and
Yeah, go ahead, Tina.
and be a teacher and help them understand about their body and their well-being. Absolutely rewarding work that you're sharing.
Well,
So
thanks for the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to doing more of it.
yes, thank you so much. Oh, yes, thank you, Ro. Thank you, everyone. Century Man, thank you, everyone. Mary, and if I forget anyone, then stay connect with Mark. Okay, she said she'll be in touch for your kind share. We'll be in touch, and she loved to stay connected with Mark. Yeah, awesome,
Sure.
Mark. You got some follow already.
Should I
Um,
speak out my acupuncture practice web site or my email?
yeah,
Would that be helpful?
I'm not sure, but
Oh, I'll leave it
I'll
alone.
discuss
They
with
can get it from
Evolve
they
Me,
can get it
and then
from
I'll,
you
I'll
or
post
Evolve
it.
Me.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
fine. Yep.
And then I'll post it on the. I'll discuss with Evolve Me, and then I'll post it on description. It's okay. And
Perfect.
thank you, Raza, Ali, SB Pisces. You know, some people, some people left
Yes,
already,
Ken.
but wonderful to have Mary Fall. Oh yeah, and then say hello and thank you. What's the name of your dog?
That's Quinn.
Quinn, look at Quinn, the yin and yang. How funny you work with yin and yang energy. Black and white is in yin and yang energy. So how interesting
Mhm.
that you have a dog with that color, right?
Yeah,
So
it's not an accident.
yes, Mary Fong, thank you very much. Patricia, thank you too. Rojin, thank you. And yes, Fadin said thank. SB Pisces, thank you too. Raza, thank you. Ali, thank you. Thank you everyone for being here attending this. You guys have a wonderful evening. Thank you, Patricia. Hope you guys learned something. And I think Chinese medicine that he's offering, even teaching, I think is very powerful, because there's not a lot of people teaching this. I have to be honest with the Chinese medicine, and I'm very much interested in that too. And I get herbs and I get acupuncture from my acupuncturist. I never believed in it before, but guys, it works. You know,
Hmm.
since I
Hmm.
have my COVID, my stomach hasn't been the same, and that's why I've been going to acupuncturist. And I'll tell you, it makes a big difference, including
Yeah, good.
natural massage. All
That's
right,
good.
Mark, thank
Tina,
you, and thank you to your partner too. She's right next to you, and your dog, your yin and
yep.
yang dog. And thanks for your knowledge. Have a great evening, guys, and thank you for attending. Please click subscribe, share this video, contact Mark for any question, because he's very knowledgeable and he got a lot of humility. Great energy with him. Love that.
Thank you, Tina.
Guys, have a wonderful time. Thank you, Mark. Take care of yourself.
All right. Bye bye.
Until then, oh, by the way, just quickly, on
Sure.
Tuesday, another live stream, free star seed reading. What she's gonna be. You guys, some of you guys got this reading already. However, this time there's gonna be question and answer about each star seed, the characteristics, and what are they like. There's gonna be a lot more knowledge and education in between the reading. So that way you learn more about the star seed system and what planet they're from, etc. on all that. So anyway, thanks a lot, everyone. Have a great, wonderful time. See you until the next week.